And for the first time ever, China formally says that it's selling some of its oil reserves. It's worried about high prices. That and much more coming up in NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. More bad news on the inflation front. Producer prices are rising at the fastest pace on record. Reinforces broader inflation concerns because higher production costs tend to trickle down to consumers. The reading jumped 8.3% in the 12 months through August. That's the highest number since 2010 when tracking began. Possible bright spot in the data, though, is the producer prices rose at a slightly slower pace in August than July, suggesting maybe, just maybe, peak inflationary pressures may have passed. A veteran American manufacturer told us this week that government and central bank stimulus is the fundamental reason for the rising prices, but said there are pandemic-related supply chain issues causing problems and driving prices higher too. One of the big supply chain related problems is actually a lack of truckers. And last time we had Mike Kucharski, the CEO of JKC Trucking, on the show, he told us that many drivers were reluctant to come back to work because they were still receiving the enhanced unemployment benefits as part of the pandemic. And Mike, pleasure to have you back on the show. And now that these enhanced unemployment benefits are ending, are you getting more inquiries about work?
Thank you for having me on your show again. Yes, I'm very thrilled that the benefits are ending, but right now I am still short drivers. You know, this weekend is Labor Day weekend, and I'm struggling more than ever I've done all year because not only I'm short drivers, a lot of drivers are going on vacation. You know, as I said last time, you know, since the pandemic started, the truck driver shortage has only intensified. You know, we are still missing 20 to 25% of all truck drivers, and it's killing us to deliver this product. You know, there's people, I get phone calls every day, and I want to help and move the food chain along to get, you know, feed all America, but it's hard for me when I don't have, you know, drivers to move the product.
You mentioned 20 to 25% down. Is that pre-pandemic number of drivers? Are you expecting them to come back, or what's holding them back?
You know, a lot of drivers are sheltering at home. A lot of drivers, I think, were just sitting at home because somebody else was collecting money, stimulus money. But also, you know, you have to understand that some drivers told me that, listen, I'm going to stay at home, protect my child has issues, my wife has issues. I'm going to stay home to protect the family. I just can't be gone on the road anymore until this ends. But another issue that's happening, that what I'm seeing is that, you know, a lot of these drivers are older drivers. You know, 42% are 45 years or older, and then about 20% are 55 years or older. So, you know, these older drivers, I don't blame them to, you know, stay at home and to wait till, you know, as the dust settles, to figure out, you know, if they should get back in a truck and you know, get sick. It's a risk they're taking.
How big a problem is this, either from an increased cost perspective for the consumer or even from a shortage perspective? Are you seeing this?
Yeah, this is a great question. You know, the catalyst, you know, causing prices to go up, skyrocketing, honestly, is, you know, fuel's going up, insurance is going up, extra pay for labor is going up. You know, JKC paid more than average per labor pre-pandemic, and we also increased another 5 cents to be competitive with competition. You know, all the competition is increasing pay. We're all fighting for the same drivers. You know, we're dealing with the labor shortages. We're getting to these DCs, these warehouses. There's not enough people to load our trucks, to unload our trucks. It's taking longer. You know, there's not enough workers in the trucking industry, but also the rails are struggling, the ports, etc. You know, all these furloughed employees. You know, it's killing us because we need this workforce to come back, which it should be shortly, hopefully, so we, you know, get the wheels rolling and get America back where it was pre-pandemic.
I want to talk to you as well about maybe a problem you hadn't foreseen, or maybe you had, was the vaccine mandate, the proposed federal vaccine mandate that the president announced yesterday. I know Truckers News, just about a month ago, they had done a survey with some truckers, and only 25% of them had actually gotten the jab, according to this survey, and 30% of the respondents actually said they would refuse a vaccine if it was mandated on them. At the same time, recently we have Tyson Foods, one of the big meat packers, mandating vaccines for their drivers. So a lot happening in this space. And when you think about the shortage, where do you think this is going to go?
When I think about it, it's going to cause a tidal wave of problems. I support the vaccine, but I also support the freedom of choice. By the government saying that we mandate you to do it. It reverses the effect. It makes them want to resist the vaccine more. We need to educate the public the benefits of the vaccine. Education and research. And I feel there wasn't enough research, that was shown, or science. They're always talking about the science. Show us the science, because if we as trucking companies or businesses, small businesses, are going to have to do this, we're going to have to show these employees why they should do it. Most of my employees, I would say, are vaccinated, but some employees said straight up that, listen, if you implement vaccination, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go to another trucking company that will take me without being vaccinated. So that's not going to help any of us. That's just going to only, cause it a further shortage of drivers and, cause the price to go up, which affects the American people in the pocket.
Mike Kacharski, JKC Trucking. But the White House is pushing ahead with its plans to try to force all private companies with over 100 employees to ensure their staff are vaccinated or tested weekly. A number of states are planning to sue to block it, but one senior White House advisor says the president will simply run them over if they try.
And those governors that stand in the way, I think it was very clear from the president's tone today that he will run over them. And it is important, and it's not for political purposes. It's to save the lives of American people. And so we won't let one or two individuals stand in the way.
President Biden unveiled a plan yesterday to impose either vaccination or frequent testing on over 80 million workers. It doesn't seem to matter if a person has natural immunity to the virus after being infected. Companies will still face large fines for non-compliance. And the senior advisor's comment raises questions about how the federal government would run over states. The United States government is federalist and combines the central government with the rights and powers of state and local governments. After Biden's speech, a number of Republican governors said they would resist the vaccine mandate and file lawsuits. The Republican National Committee officially announcing plans to sue the administration when the mandate goes into effect. So joining us to discuss the proposed vaccine mandate is lawyer and partner at Banal Law Group, Jesse Banal. Banal tweeting out yesterday that any legal or paralegal at a big law firm facing a vax mandate can come and work with him. He believes in personal medical freedom. Jesse Banal, pleasure to have you on the show. I get that your law firm may not be directly impacted by this vax mandate, but from your tweet, it seems that even if you were, you would choose not to follow a mandate like this. Why?
Absolutely. And thanks so much for having me, Paul. I would say that this is America. In America, we believe in personal medical freedom. And to have the government conscript business owners and say that we are going to fine you unless you make sure all of your workers follow our requirements, our vaccine mandates, is absolutely obscene. That flies in the face of any sort of freedom and liberty, and to force business owners to do that is really unconscionable. And I will not do it as a business owner. And it doesn't matter if I have 5 employees, 10 employees, or 100 employees. That's not something that I think any business owner should comply with, because it flies in the face of what America is.
And how about they seem to be giving an alternative to mandating the vaccine is get tested every week. Considering we're in a pandemic, would you go along with this, or?
Absolutely not. First of all, that's putting the burden on employees, a substantial burden on employees to go out and find some way to get tested and pay an exorbitant cost to get tested every single week. And again, that's just not something that is reasonable, something that you should force employees or employers, for that matter, to pay that high cost out of their paychecks in a difficult economic time to get tested every single week when they're feeling just fine. That's not a reasonable request by the government. And for instance, a lot of my employees, they work remotely. there's no need for them to get tested every week. And for the government to require that, for the federal government to interfere in our rights as Americans to seek employment, to be employed, and to have employees, flies in the very face of freedom and liberty.
We see a number of governors are threatening to sue the administration to try and block this mandate if it were to go through. Where do you think we stand on the legal side of this?
I think that, especially on the mandates for private employers, there is a very strong legal argument that this is not a proper regulation from the executive. They're not going through the proper process for putting in new regulations. If they want to change the law, that's something that they would have to go through Congress for. And really, they're exceeding the constitutional bounds of the executive branch by trying to do this, especially trying to do this without Congress. And moreover, the Constitution really puts issues of health and safety in the hands of the states, not the federal government. So even if Congress did want to do that, I would still say this is an issue for the states, not the federal government. And you certainly can't tell me as a Floridian that I have to abide by the rules that Joe Biden, sitting in Washington, D.C., who doesn't represent me as a Floridian at all, have to put into effect. And I think there is going to be very strong legal challenges to this. You could go into detail about the fact that you're supposed to have a notice and comment period for new regulations, that the Administrative Procedure Act has all sorts of hoops you got to jump through. And they seem to think that there's a COVID exception to the rule of law, a COVID exception to the American Constitution, and there's not. And it's, I think finally we're seeing a lot of judges that are willing to stand up to these government overreaches, and I'm very optimistic that this is going to be an example of a time when the courts strike down what Biden is doing here.
And Wall Street ended lower today, the Dow falling 272 points, 0.8%. S&P 500 lost 35 points, also 0.8%. And NASDAQ dropping 133 points, about 0.9% today. And two Federal Reserve officials say they'll sell their individual stock holdings by the end of the month. They want to address apparent conflicts of interest. The president of the Dallas Federal Reserve, Robert Kaplan, and the Boston Fed president, Eric Rosengren, issued statements yesterday. They said they'll invest the proceeds of the sales in diversified index funds and cash savings, and said they won't trade in those funds as long as they're in their roles. The announcements come after both faced scrutiny over trades they made last year. The Wall Street Journal reporting Kaplan made multiple million-dollar-plus stock trades in 2020. Critics say it's a conflict of interest because the Fed's decisions can dramatically affect the stock market. Both say their financial dealings, though, are in compliance with the Fed's ethics rules. And so on the vaccine mandate, what's the word on the street? How are everyday Americans reacting to it? NTD's Phil Zoe went downtown Manhattan to speak to the people there.
New Yorkers are split on the new vaccine mandate. Acte Maldonado is a senior citizen. She's been working in the education system for over 40 years. Acte, how do you feel about President Biden's latest vaccine mandate?
I'm all for the vaccine mandate. I work in a company that has over 1,000 employees, and they are mandating that if we want to go and work face-to-face, we must have the vaccine. I already have my 2 vaccines plus my booster. I am in the vulnerable population because I'm a senior citizen already.
She's recommending everyone to get the vaccine.
I have no concerns at all. Dr. Fauci is my Bible. Everyone should get the vaccine. I'm all for it. I got it and I'm still alive and no side effects.
But not everyone agrees.
I strongly disagree. I find it's highly unconstitutional, running afoul of many of the constitutional amendments from the Bill of Rights.
Patrick Kane works in security systems technology. He says the mandate might have an opposite effect.
This is not going to work out the way he wants to, and will actually cause more vaccine hesitancy.
Kane says it feels like he's being forced to get vaccinated, and he's not happy about it.
My company has well more than 100 employees, and so yesterday's edict affected me. I'm going to wait until my company officially orders the directive. That way, there's liability.
Marisol works in finance. She says there should be some exceptions.
I think if people really have medical issues or other personal issues, there's always a way to find exceptions.
Some say the vaccine should be a personal choice. Let people decide the future for themselves.
It's up to you, and we have to respect that too. You know, and they must have their reasons. Why?
It's really up to a person, so it's a kind of confusing when they say that.
Everyone is entitled to their doubts or whatever their, whatever the reason may be that they wouldn't want to get the vaccine, side effects being one of them.
Phil Zhou, NTD News.
Now we go over to NTD's Evelyn Lee with news that 1/3 of all Americans who use buy now, pay later services have fallen behind on payments, according to a new study by Credit Karma.
Buy now, pay later is a service that's really having a moment this year. It's generating billions in revenue for retailers. A lot has happened in this regard recently, too. Amazon partnered with a firm. PayPal will stop charging late fees on buy now, pay later payments. And Apple also announced this payment service. And it's changing our buying behavior. Joining me now is Ted Rossman, a senior analyst at creditcards.com, to find out what consumers should pay attention to so they don't fall into a debt trap. Thank you, Ted, for speaking with me today. So buy now, pay later. That's a trend that's getting a lot more traction recently. And I mean, it doesn't only help customers finance their purchases, but it's also so beneficial for retailers since it's generating billions and billions in sales, right? So I'm wondering, how does it change the consumer's behavior?
Yeah, so this is definitely a potential win for both, although there are some potential pitfalls to be aware of. So consumers really like this because it lets them spread out purchases, so you don't need to have all the money today. But unlike a credit card, the interest rate can be lower and there's a fixed payback period. Merchants like it because it's a customer acquisition tool. There's definitely a lot of loyalty associated with these programs, and there's a lot of data that they can gather on their customers, and that is something that they like as well. So even though they pay higher processing fees than credit cards, they're often very willing to do that.
So you mentioned loyalty. Do you mean by that customers, because of that service, they tend to go back to the same merchants again and again? Is that one of the ways that consumer behavior changes? And what else would that include?
That's right. Yeah. So there's evidence that buy now, pay later services like Affirm have a lot of repeat customers. I've seen stats like 2/3 of buyers come back. And it does go to show that people like these for the most part. I mean, yes, there are some complaints and there are some things that can go wrong, but a lot of people, especially young adults, like buy now, pay later because there's often either no credit check or a soft credit check. So it's easier to get access to this than it is to get, let's say, a credit card or another loan.
And I think it's also a very powerful tool for businesses and to marketers, right, to actually influence some of consumers' behaviors in a way, but that's not necessarily beneficial for them. So what do you think? What should consumers look out for?
There's a lot of variability with these. So you really need to figure out your specific terms. For instance, sometimes it's no interest, but sometimes it's a 30% interest rate. That's astronomical. The average credit card charges about 16%. So if you're getting into this because you need a little more time to pay off the purchase and you like the light at the end of the tunnel, you like knowing that it's 4 payments over 6 weeks, or maybe it's monthly payments for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, that predictability can be good, but you need to figure out what terms you specifically are qualifying for. Because if your credit score is lower, or if you're using, one service rather than another, you may get completely different terms.
But I mean, this kind of service, it does still bring a lot of benefits to the consumer, right? So do you have any best practice advice for anybody who is still looking to use that service?
I think one of the potential angles here is the so-called Henry crowd, the acronym for high earner, not rich yet. Affirm and Peloton is a good example. You can pay no interest for up to 39 months on a Peloton bike or treadmill if you have good credit. that could save you a lot of money in interest because these are several $1,000 items. So the potential to open up some cash flow, spread that out over time. If you're not paying interest, it's basically free money. I would say the best practice would be if you can get a no interest plan and if you're buying something that you would have bought anyway. I would say, though, using a credit card, paying in full and getting the rewards and the better buyer protections makes a lot of sense, too. So I think it's kind of that middle ground. It's somebody who needs a little more time but can pay it before interest hits. That's probably the best case for buy now, pay later.
Very valuable insights. Thank you so much, Ted, for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For the first time ever, China is announcing that it's selling some oil reserves. China doesn't produce very much oil domestically. It has to import it, so it's usually very protective of its reserves. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the details.
For the first time ever, China formally announces it's selling some of its oil reserves. The National Food and Strategic Reserves Administration announced on its website that this is done to alleviate the pressure of rising raw material prices and that putting National Reserve crude oil on the market through open auction sales will better stabilize the domestic market.
This announcement seems more almost performative. Although it's the first time the government in China has admitted or announced that this is taking place, it's certainly not the first time that it's actually ever taken place.
Troy Vincent is a market analyst at DTN. He's been using satellite imagery to track China's oil, and he's seen quite clearly that there's little physical distinction between state and private reserves.
Physical oil traders, they've known for years that in China, because so much of the refining and oil sector is owned by the state itself, the reserves of the government are far more fluid than they are in the United States, for example.
Vincent says the announcement is a sign of desperation that the government would come out and try to talk down markets. Oil prices fell to a 2-week low after the announcement, but have since more or less recovered. China is the world's biggest importer of oil, ahead of the United States and India, and China is the second largest oil consumer in between the U.S. and India. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And still to come this evening, Bentley unveils its rarest car yet. Find out how much it costs and what makes it so unique. And a 9/11 family gives back to first responders. Their family business donates a portion of the proceeds to nonprofits that helped injured or ill 9/11 emergency personnel. That and more after this short break.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Curatang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Curatang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Welcome back. Bentley has just released its rarest car ever. Meet the Bentley Bacalar. Bentley's only going to manufacture 12 of these cars and they will all be custom made. What you're seeing isn't a convertible, there's no roof at all. So you better live in a good climate because at a starting price of $2 million, imagine what Bentley would charge to fix a shorted out radio or water damaged leather. Bentley says the Bacalar is the rarest two-door vehicle it's ever offered in what it calls the modern era. That's a reference to the company's history building coaches back in the 1500s. And thousands of American families lost loved ones in the September 11th attacks. But the tragedy prompted one family to launch a business to give back to those who helped them 20 years ago. NTD's Faye Corder has the story.
On the Friday after the 9/11 attacks, 11-year-old twins Mike and Dan Friedman walked to firehouses and hospitals, handing out socks to firefighters and first responders. With the socks, they also passed out flyers with their father's photo, asking everyone if they had seen him. Their father, Andrew Friedman, was working in the World Trade Center, but they would never see him again.
It was brutal because he meant everything to us as a dad, as a husband, as a friend, coach, role model. And that feeling that we're never going to see him again, that was tough. That was really tough.
Dan said the idea for the family's sock company, Tall Order, was born on that Friday after the 9/11 attacks.
These guys would come from all over the city, all over the Northeast, all over the country to go help out at Ground Zero and walk through the rubble, and their feet were getting dirty and sweaty and stinky, so they would always ask for clean and dry socks. So we went from firehouse to firehouse, hospital to hospital to give out these socks. So to us, socks have always represented hope for our family.
15 years later, the boys had grown up and were working corporate jobs, but they say they weren't fulfilled.
But we also had that sort of nagging thing in the back of our head that says, you know, we're not giving back the way that we should, the way that our dad taught us to do. And we always thought it was a, quote, tall order to pay back everyone who helped us out.
So the twins created the sock business Tall Order in 2016. A portion of the proceeds go to Tuesday's Children. That's a nonprofit that supports children of 9/11 victims. A portion of sales also goes to the Feel Good Foundation, which advocates for injured or ill 9/11 emergency personnel. Mike and Dan honor their father on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks the same way each year.
We always go out to one of his favorite restaurants, Peter Luger's in Brooklyn, where we get together with some of his closest friends from growing up. We share stories, we eat great food, stuff that he liked, and we just have a good time. We try to keep it as positive as possible.
Dan says the grieving process never ends, but what they've been doing on 9/11 anniversaries is a tradition they hope to continue for years to come. He says it's about celebrating their father's life.
Really nice. That's the latest business updates for this week. You can still catch NTD Evening News, though. That's with Stephanie and Cox at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.